What up, everybody? Welcome to Legacy TV and the Convo Podcast. And man, today is one of the most special days since I started this podcast. I'm a big fan. I train. It's been 20 years for me in the sport of MMA and jiu-jitsu, and it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. And one of the inspirations for me when I was coming up and watching fighters and stuff and watching MMA was, you know, the Nick Diaz, the Nate Diaz, the Gilbert Melendez, the Jake Shields era. You know, that time was a very special time, and there were some very special athletes. And I always say this, and you know, I've been blessed to have some of the best coaches in the world come on my channel, and I've been able to have them all in the studio. So it's with an honor, like the utmost honor, to have one of my favorite coaches that I wanted to have on the podcast. He's done a great job in the sport. We got none other than Cesar Gracie in the house today. My first Gracie. Welcome to the podcast, brother. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on. Much appreciated. Good to be here. Good to be here.
And not only just you can just pull the mic like towards you and move it around comfortably. Not only that, but you know, I was blessed to have you for a seminar as well for some of my students, which you know. It's the details were insane, brother. So thank you for this. It means a lot.
Good bunch of guys. It's good to be out here. Good to see that jiu-jitsu is going strong. You know, the first place that I really my jiu-jitsu career, if you will, outside of Brazil was really here in Southern California. You know, when I first came out here. So it's always great to come back here and see that, you know, the sport is still growing. It's still producing a lot of great people out here, and you know, there's so much interest and love for the sport here.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's it's kind of crazy to me because look, let's be honest, and I know a lot of you guys are gonna relate to this, right? A lot of Brazilians that came out here that teach jiu-jitsu do not speak as good as English as Cesar does. So my question is, let me just start off the bat.
Yeah.
Where were you born? You were born in Brazil. Like, can you give me a little bit about your upbringing and how it all started? How did you get into jiu-jitsu? How did this all start?
Yeah,
for you?
No, for sure. So the thing was, even though I was born in Brazil, I went to a private school and we learned English at the private school. So it was just on the curriculum to learn how to speak English. So from the earliest memories I have in school, we had English class.
Wow.
And we were learning English. So when I moved out here, you know, I mean, my English was a little rough, but you know, I picked it up pretty quick because we've been learning it. And a lot of my family members, they didn't have the same experience as me. So they would come out and then, you know, excuse me, when I first came out here, my mother, she married an American, and she's like, oh, you got to just speak English now. You're going to go to school here. I try to speak Portuguese to her, and she goes, no, you got to speak English, because she understood I needed to learn the language, you know, and I wasn't allowed to speak Portuguese at home was the thing. So It was pretty much, you know, sink or swim, and I just had to learn the language, and you know, at the time I didn't like it, obviously, but I think it was beneficial overall.
Well, yeah, because the reason why I'm saying this is, you know, going through the seminar with you, like the way you teach is very articulate, you know, and I feel like some of the best teachers in jiu-jitsu period are able to speak the way you do and really break down the details. And like, the language barrier sometimes can be, you know, a hindrance. And so that for me, that's one of the original things is like, he's a Gracie, but he speaks like has no accent. Like there's no accent whatsoever, you know?
No.
So that's pretty cool. So I'm assuming like that having that as your background is being able to speak that, it was very easy for you to come to America and
for sure.
and teach people.
Yes, for sure. So what had happened was, you know, I moved here and then I moved back to Brazil and
how long were you here for, if you don't mind me asking?
The first time I was ever out here, I was actually like 7 years old when I first came out, you know, and then I ended up going back. I was in school and I moved back there for a while, and then I would just kind of go back and forth. And I used to train at the original Gracie Baja is where I started. So my instructors were at the time was like Hilion. And I would work out. My workout partners were Half Gracie, Henzo.
Half and Henzo. That's
man. Yeah. That was the daily.
That's all you need right there.
That was the daily grind. That was daily. Me and Half would go at it for hours. I mean, it was like, you know, he trains hard.
I remember like originally like hearing of Half was a lot with BJ Penn back in the days.
Well, BJ Penn started with us. So when I had a school out here, Half had a place in Sao Paulo. He was teaching with his brother Hyan, and he's passed away, obviously. But those two were two how do you say, very strong personalities. So even though they were brothers and they loved each other, but they really couldn't work together. You know what I mean? They'd get in fist fights. I mean, they were crazy. You'd think they hated each other, but
because one of them wants to have the upper hand, right?
That's it. And they were both raised like, I mean, their mother, Vera, she was just such, and Hobson, I mean, they were like tough people. And you were raised like, I don't know, man, it was like being in a pack of wolves back then. I was like, what's going on? Great people. But he just didn't get along with Hyan, and then the mother and so forth. They called me. Can Half come out here? You know what I mean? There's problems, and I said, yeah, bring him out because we were really good training partners. We were blue belts together back in the day. So he came out here, and he was my primary training partner. We would train every day. At one point, so I had two schools, and he ended up basically taking one of the schools completely, like, okay, you're going to live down there, and the Mountain View School, and BJ Penn, his father wanted to send him out, and his father sent BJ out here, and he lived right next to the Mountain View School. And his primary training partners were David Camarillo and a host of other people, really good people back in the day.
Camarillos.
Yeah, so Half had this team. It was a really tough team. It was BJ Penn, Dave Camarillo.
When do you and Henzo and Half like split up? Like at what age?
Well,
what age and like?
So what happened? We never. I mean, when you say split up, like it's just that Henzo stayed in Brazil when I moved back here. So I moved out here. I moved back out here, and I brought the Machados with me.
And what belt were you at this time when you?
God, when I first, I don't know if I was purple or brown or something like that. When I first, I think it was the late '80s or something like that. I don't know.
Came out here the early day.
Yeah. I think it was a brown belt or something. But anyways, so Henzo had stayed in Brazil, and he basically took over Gracie Baja, if you will. John Jack was the head instructor. Carlos Gracie Jr. owned Gracie Baja, but the instructors were really the Machados, and who was holding down the fort was John Jack Machado out there. So I brought Higgin out, and then the other brothers one by one followed, and they all stayed in my house in Redondo Beach. So I got that whole group started out here.
Shout out Higgin Machado. Shout out the legend. We've had him on the show.
Oh yeah, he's been out. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, he's funny.
Great dude, yeah.
So we were like best friends at the time, me and Higgin, and then so Henzo ended up staying in Brazil, and then eventually Henzo, kind of saw the writing on the wall, and he ended up coming out, and he moved to New York, and he got his whole thing started there. And
he's like, I'm gonna go do my thing. Like
he did his thing. He did a wonderful thing. I mean, he brought up Matt Serra, all those really good guys.
Just amazing people have come out of that gym.
He was probably one of my favorite instructors also. I mean, he's very technical. And so, I mean, we never really split up. It was just, he got married, had a kid, and he moved to New York is what it was. And to this day, I go do seminars out there. He comes into seminars at my place.
You guys are still tight.
Yeah, we're tight. We have a good time. I mean, it's hard to get a hold of him sometimes.
You guys ever like just want to like when you guys see each other, just want to like get back on the mat and roll? Like, do you guys ever?
The funny thing is it's more like instead of rolling that much, it's more like, hey, check this out. You know what I mean?
Exchange of information.
Yeah, I've been doing this. What do you think from this position? And I go, oh man, yeah, I do this from here. So it's kind of a cool thing like that. And Henzo is very diplomatic guy, very charismatic, and I think he was probably one of the best guys for the explosion of the sport.
Absolutely.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I can maybe tell you a story that most people don't know. When people call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that really came from Henzo. Because at the time it was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
In Brazil itself, there was no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu never existed before the U.S. That's what people don't understand. They go, oh, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. No. When I lived in Brazil at that time in the 80s and in the 70s, I was in Brazil. So
was it Jiu-Jitsu?
It's Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
It was either the people called it Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and we just called it Jiu-Jitsu. So coming out here, you know, Hois's brother Horion, he had a patent on Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and he wanted to be the leader of that. And so what happened was his Renzo goes, okay, I'm just going to call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know what I mean? Because he didn't want to fall under having to teach for Horion, and he didn't want to deal with that whole patent situation.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that was gonna come down to like some money, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and he was making videotapes, and he said, well, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's what he called it, you know?
Yeah.
And that exploded to today. When you hear Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it really came from Renzo.
That's dope.
That's the
dope.
thing.
That's a dope piece of information right there.
And then now the funny thing is it got so big here, that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil.
Yeah.
You know, Jiu-Jitsu Brasileiro.
BJJ. Is like
it's BJJ. We do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but there was no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
The words, the Jiu-Jitsu is synonymous with Brazilian now. It's been, and it's been stamped, but I believe rightfully so, because the people that put the stamp on that sport are all Brazilian, most of them.
Pretty much.
If I'm not, you know, the people that taught the people that represented Jiu-Jitsu were Brazilian.
No, for sure. You know,
I had Francisco Mansour, who
Francisco.
I had him on the podcast, and what he told me, he went back to try to find out like what was the origination of even the word, and he said he was telling me on our show that it was jujutsu, and it was spelled Jujutsu and all that. But like that's like, I don't know, he's like a historian of jujitsu, you know,
for sure.
Like too far for me. But
he was those guys early days, you know, they trained under Elio. Some under Carlos and so forth, but they were like they're even.
Did you have a relationship with Helio Gracie?
I did. I've trained with Helio. I've trained with him. He's my uncle, you know, great uncle, and obviously there's, you know, I'm from the Carlos side of the family, but I had a very good relationship with him. I used to go to his house all the time. People don't know this, but the very first jiu-jitsu school in Brazil was out of his house, and then he ended up selling that house. And the Machados bought it, their father, and so I literally was living when I went out there. I lived in the first jiu-jitsu school,
the actual house.
In the house that was the jiu-jitsu school. So, you know, I mean, I go way back with the history for sure.
I wonder if he knew, like, you know, how big this whole thing was gonna get. You know, like. How far it's come to this point now.
It's an international phenomenon, and what it really shows me is my grandfather Carlos, who was really the originator of everything, just a really great guy.
Can you break that down?
So Carlos was the older brother, and he's the one that was
he's the oldest brother.
Yeah, and he was the guy that learned from you know, the Konjikoma, those guys that came down. And from Japan. The thing about Japan is, if you go to a judo school today and they do like the mat work that they do, it's the exact same thing they did like when I was a little kid. If you go to a jiu-jitsu place, it's like different. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, they're working on this different guard here, the 50-50 or barrel or whatever. Right. You know, so they were traditionalists, and you know, my grandfather, not being Japanese, he wasn't. I think it works a little better if I do this. And it just had that spark to it where like the innovation came into it. And after a while, it was so different than what the Japanese guys were showing that people had to think, oh, that's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
That's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was different than Jiu-Jitsu now, you know. And then eventually, you know, it took over the whole country and it became Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
It just Jiu-Jitsu, you know what I mean? So that's kind of like how it got started, and Carlos taught his brothers, and it went from there.
It's pretty crazy how like it just started, you know, spreading, and then the UFC comes around. Now let's get into this. Mm-hmm. So when you come back over here, and you, like, was this like part of your plan growing up? Did you always want to be like involved in jiu-jitsu, or did you have another profession that you wanted to do before that, or any like ideas? You want to be a soccer player?
As a kid, I had all kinds of different ideas for sure. But you know, when
does it spark for you that you want to become?
I went back to Brazil because I remember learning as a kid, like when I was small, and like we all trained. But then when I went back to Brazil in the 80s, I think it was 1986 or something. And man, I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. This is, I mean, I love the camaraderie. I love the fact that you didn't have to be big, that you didn't have to weigh 300 pounds. Because out here, you had the bigger is better was the American mentality. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, I'm over there watching. I watched this little dude absolutely handle some big dude, and I'm like, man, this is amazing. You know, and then I knew right away at that point, and it brings people together. Oh yeah, and it's just the workout. You know, being a young man really young back then in my teens and seeing that, I was like, I'm going to do this. And I knew, you know, and at the time I had moved out to Northern California because my mother had married an American. And so when I went back to Brazil, when I came back with Higgin Machado. He'd never been on a plane before. And I said, you know, I'm going to America, and he wanted to go with me. So I put him on the plane when we flew back. And I was like, man, the only jiu-jitsu at the time was really Horion and had a place Hoist was teaching. Yeah. Hoist was the instructor in a place in Torrance, his garage, you know. So we came back out here and we moved to Van Nuys, and it was like the rush hour traffic sucked, and we would just make that drive, I think 2 or 3 times a week, whatever, and we would just train and that's how I started. You know, we had to find the training. There was no other schools, you know. So I would do that, and occasionally I would go to the judo club and do some judo. So you were all in on, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a jiu-jitsu instructor. I was all in. That's there was dope. No plan B. That's dope. I feel like you know, like jiu-jitsu has this ability to, like, if it's meant for you, like, it's gonna get you and you're gonna be hooked and you need it in your life. Yeah, right? No, 100%. And so okay, so you're teaching in like LA, Van Nuys area, and then what makes the move go up north, like to and take me through how you start teaching up there? Well, my mother still lived up north. I really enjoyed the scene up there, the Bay Area scene. I like the hills. I like going to Lake Tahoe, and so I had a great time living out here for a few years. But then when I wanted to open my own school, I realized there was, I mean, outside of LA. I mean, when I moved out here, there was one school. The only school that existed was the Horion school. And then I opened up the second school. I bought the mats and I made it in my garage, my house. And the Machados would be teaching there at the school the second school I opened it in Redondo Beach. And eventually Torrance had to close down because they had some zoning violations. And they ended up renting my place, you know, my mats. They rented time from me to put their students. So at one point, every school was out of my garage. It was pretty funny, you know. There's cars all day coming through, and we had a detached garage. It was pretty cool. But then eventually I said, hey, I'm gonna. So after that, I started training with Hickson, and then I said, you know what, I'm gonna move back north. I'm gonna move up north, and I'm gonna open a school up there. And that's what briefly happened. You know, you don't have to get too deep into the training with Hickson. Yeah, because arguably I've heard so many people say he's the GOAT when it comes for sure to jiu-jitsu. Yeah, we got to hear it from Cesar Gracie too. Like, the best. No, he was he was the best at that time. He pretty much. What do you think if you had to say like one thing that you could say about Hickson, that why he was the best? What do you think it was? Like, he lived and breathed jiu-jitsu. He was raised to live and breathe jiu-jitsu. His dad like installed that, like, my kid's gonna do jiu-jitsu, and that's all he lived and breathed it. He just got it. It's weird. I mean, physically he was very strong. He was flexible, but he just, I don't know. He would just, it was a gift. It was something, he had just something special. So naturally good at it. Yeah. It was like, you know, and I enjoyed my time training with him. You know, I did, because previous to that, jiu-jitsu to me was more kind of like with the Machado is more of a sport aspect to it. And then when I go to Hickson school, it's more of a fight, you know, like street fight type of thing. Like, hey, we're doing this. You're going to like take care of business if you have to. Yeah. And so suddenly it wasn't, you know, the sport as much, if you will. Real. And the techniques were slightly different and everything. So I like training, you know, and it was good for me to get different aspects to my game. And then when I moved back up north, you know, my primary training partner, I brought Half down. So then Half had been in Brazil learning all this, you know, the modern Gracie bot, whatever that he was doing down there. And so then we would just go over techniques and train. Yeah. So you start teaching up north now. Like, let's get into like, I mean, because I feel like
of course, there's so many of your students that you have over the years that you've touched and helped along the way. And I feel myself as a coach now, like when I first started coaching, it was because my coach wanted me to coach. He pushed me to it. But I realized once I actually started doing it and getting invested in my students, how rewarding it was to help people.
100%.
And that was like, being a mentor, being a positive role model, or somebody could turn to, not just on the mat, but like off the mat too. Like being somebody's coach is so valuable to someone's life. And without, you in some of these people's lives, their lives could have gone in a complete different direction. Yeah. So with that being said, I know you've had a lot of great students, but take me through your meeting the Diaz boys. Let's start there.
Diaz. So what happened with them was I met Nick first. I had a guy that was on our team. His name's Steve Heath.
Yeah.
You know who that is? Yeah. So he's a Stockton guy. They called him the King of Stockton. He used to fight.
And he was with you, right? He was training.
He was with me. I met him. He did a seminar with me. And then after the seminar, he just started training with me. That's right. You know what I mean? He did a seminar. I took the shirt off my back, and and he started representing us. It was really cool. Previous to that, he'd done a little bit of training. I think it was with the Lions Den or something like that back in the day, and we were rivals. Yeah. So he had joined my team. And then one day he called me up. I got this kid here. He's 16 years old. He's so talented. He just gets it. So I brought one of my students, and another one. Dave Terrell went with me. Dave and one other guy.
Dave's an absolute. For those of you that don't know who Dave Terrell is, go look. That dude is an absolute savage.
Yeah, at the time, Dave Terrell was the best grappler in the U.S. He beat Dean Lister twice. The guy was like, to this day, he's got a great school out in Santa Rosa.
Did he start from white belt with Dave Terrell?
Yeah.
Started from white belt?
White to black with me.
How long did it take Dave Terrell to get it from white to black?
I don't even remember right now.
Was he quick? Because I know some guys are on a different plane as far as how much they train and all that.
Yeah. Well, Dave lived with me. Yeah. So Dave moved into my house. I mean, Dave would wake up in the morning, and I'd drag him to the academy. Wow. And he spent all day there.
And then I assume you're teaching private, so he's probably helping you.
He's helping.
He's getting all the info.
He's getting the deep, understanding, and he's just got really good at it. But it did take him a long time. I don't really give belts out very, especially quickly. Back then. It was like I was trying to make my mark too. I think because I got the school out here. I want to be known as having good students.
Tough student, absolutely.
So I took Dave out there and he rolled with Nick, and he was like pretty impressed with Nick. Like it's a natural getting out of stuff and just kind of, and Dave's a bruiser, like you said. But so then and Nick loved jiu-jitsu. He was like me, where he just like, man, I love this stuff. Yeah. I love this stuff. And he used to just make the drive constantly and train with me. And
from 16 years old, he started.
From 16, and his brother. Then he would bring his brother Nate, who was 14.
Wow.
And then so there were 16 and 14, and these are like Stockton kids.
I'm just thinking because now, coaching as long as I have and envisioning some of my kids that I have that are 16 and 14. Yeah. It's just like to see something special in someone that age is like only a real coach that's been around the game is gonna know like this kid's got something. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So did you know them off the mat a little bit before?
Yeah, we hung out all that. Well, we met from jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because he trained with Steve Heath, Nick did, and then he would bring his brother. His brother would come out. I don't think his brother really loved he just really just like, he's doing whatever. He looked up to Nick, and Nick was the older brother. He's going to do whatever Nick told him. Yeah. And, if it's MMA, he's doing MMA. He didn't care. It's like whatever his brother's doing, he's doing. He kind of followed that game plan. And Nick was a phenomenon at everything. And then I got him into boxing and obviously MMA and everything. So
and he had one of the most inspiring careers. I think a lot of people that watch MMA were first a fan of him. He brought so many new people to the sport. Him and Nick and Nate mean so much to MMA. It's crazy,
They're foundations of it. That's the thing. Then obviously we had these other guys at the time that these guys were coming up. Jake Shields came on board. Yeah. Now Jake, he was a white belt, but he was already an MMA fighter. So he was
a wrestler.
He was a wrestler. He was a wrestler from up by Stockton.
Like Chuck's area, no? San
No,
Luis
I don't.
Obispo? I know
Well,
he trained with
he
Chuck
ended up
for a little
going
bit.
there.
Yeah.
When I met him, he was with Chuck,
Right.
and he was fighting MMA, and he fought one of our guys, and my guy beat him. You know what I mean?
Wow.
In MMA, Martin Armendariz. So he ended up getting a TKO over Jake, and Jake was one of those guys. He had all the drive, and I've met a lot of these guys. They had the passion, they had the drive, they didn't have the technique, and it's hard. You're a coach, and you understand. We give our lives to teaching. It's like it's hard to get a mentor that's going to teach you. So when Jake came to my school, the first day he came in, he got put to sleep. He trained with Dave Terrell. He woke up. He's like, he'd never trained with Dave before. He goes, this is Dave Terrell. Yeah, you're going to train with him. And he got put in I think it was a Peruvian necktie or something. And he just wakes up. And he's like, and to his credit, he stuck around. He's like, this is cool, man. And so he started, he had moved up. He was going to school in San Francisco State or something. I don't know. He was up there somewhere in San Francisco. And so he joined the team, and then he kept fighting, and then just kept winning, And
then they were making people were making the drive to come to see you.
It
was
we were the school. We were we had and then Gilbert Melendez, who was in San Francisco, his friend with he's originally from out here, Santa Ana.
Shout out Gilbert Melendez. Shout out the city. Shout out Santa Ana all day, every day.
So he's from out here, and then he started going to school in San Francisco, and he met Jake, and they were like just buddies. They were like. And he's like, hey man, you got to do this stuff.
Yeah, come do this.
They were both wrestlers on the team or something. I said, hey man, forget wrestling. You got to go train jiu-jitsu, dude. You got to do MMA. And Gilbert, being the tough guy he is like, yeah, I'm down. You know what I mean? It's like there's no hesitation.
He's from Santa Ana.
Yeah, he was down right away.
Yeah.
And then that guy impressed me. I mean, he'd fight. He was not the most technical guy, but man, that guy
scrap.
He could scrap.
Yeah.
He would not stop. I mean, he impressed. He was. Endless,
the heart, the
heart
grit,
that would not. He was there to win. He was there to prove it, And so all of a sudden, we've got 4 of these guys, and they're training together, and they're good.
That's like what a group to have, like
daily. And the cool thing was Nick and Jake were about the same weight, and Gilbert and Nate were about the same weight. And at the time, we and then other people were on our team too. Tyson Griffin, who fought in the UFC for a long time.
I remember Tyson. Tyson was good too. Tyson was savage.
Yeah. He was good.
Little dude, little juggernaut,
little guy, but tough. So he was on our team, and but on our team it was and not a bad thing, but he was out. I don't want to say second string, but it was obviously Gil and Nate were the boys.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then Tyson ended up going off, and I think
AKA right.
No, it wasn't AKA. It was it Team Quest? Not one of those teams. I don't know.
Extreme Couture.
Extreme Couture.
Yeah, that's right.
He ended up going to Extreme Couture and training, and people were like, "What the hell are you doing, man? You're so good! Like what?" He was a superstar when he got there.
Yeah.
And a lot of my guys they were superstars.
Yeah.
And not in my gym though.
Yeah.
But they go anywhere else, they're a superstar.
Absolutely.
But in my gym, it's just because it was such a tough gym. But yeah. Very good grappler, very good, and then he would train, and because of the way his style was, though, I ended up sending him to Dave Terrell's. I said, listen, you need to hook up with my guy, Dave Terrell in Santa Rosa, because he lived close to there. So anyways, that's old school stuff.
This is the crew that, made, helped make MMA what it is today.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
For
some of those fights and some, like I said, man, they inspired a lot of people. They inspired a lot of generation. And having that room, what do you think it was about the training that was able to breed these all into champions the way they all became like that?
I think everything, number one, they had the drive. Number one, they had the mentality for it. Yeah. It's hard to get people with that mentality.
And they had a father figure, they had
yeah.
I feel like you have to have that.
You got to have that. You got to have someone. At the time, I didn't have kids. I didn't have anything. I had jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu and my team was the thing I breathed for. I loved jiu-jitsu, and I was on a mission to prove that we could be the best, and I feel we accomplished it, which was really cool because our run in Strikeforce, Elite XC, Pride, all those things. I mean, my guys they're always the main event, always winning, always just like all the belts, all the, it was like that. So I had to have the commitment. They had to have the commitment, and that's what it takes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you guys, you guys had a great run, and it's great. What's crazy to me is it's still not over. There's still, the guys are still, so a lot of them are still competing. Like, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and like, feel free to speak on what you want and what you don't, for me, like, I've been kind of wondering myself, because I'm a big Nick Diaz fan, and, I think a lot of the people would want to know also, like, how's he doing? Have you spoke to him lately? Like,
texted me this morning. So we speak a lot and everything. I think what happened with Nick is, like, how do I explain this? Nick is like a sponge. And if he's with this type of person, he's going to absorb that. If he's with the wrong people, he's going to absorb that. He becomes that. Yeah. The same mentality that he did for fighting, it was like, with him, it's all or die. I'm gonna go 100%.
If you're gonna party, you're gonna party 100%.
If he's gonna party, he's gonna party harder than anybody. Like, he'll leave everybody behind. No one can out party that guy.
Right. Everything is to the extreme. I know that type of the personality.
That's the mentality. Like that. And when he used it for training and for fighting, that guy was the best. That guy was the best, man. It's Absolutely. Like, you lock him up with, I don't care who, the GSP, whatever, in a room, guess who's walking out?
Absolutely.
He might win. He might lose a fight. Like, oh, you're down on, this guy held you down or whatever. But you put him in a room with some, and he's going to go for hours now. He's going to beat you. So he was the best. I mean, he was the best I've ever seen. But like I said, once he started to hang out with, I think Ronda Rousey got him drinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because she would come up before she was famous. She'd hang out and everything. And, but she could drink. It wasn't her fault. It was just, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
He could not drink. He can't do things like that. And that set him on a different path. And all of a sudden, his friends were Hollywood friends.
Yeah.
His friends were Las Vegas friends. They were kind of weird. And then so he went on a path that, but I can't go on that path.
Right.
That's not my path.
Right.
I won't follow him in that path.
Right.
You know what I mean? So all I can do is stay on the outside and wait for him to come to my path, but I won't follow his path.
Absolutely.
So I got love for that guy. I love him. He's 16. At 16, I trained him, and I was like a father to him, if you want to say that, older brother, father, whatever.
Yeah.
But I have to wait for him to want to be on this other path.
Absolutely.
So
we all wish, the best for Nick. And so, like, and as far as Nick goes, God willing, he, we see him again, and if not, he had a great career as it is. What is the outcome you want for Nick? Like, as far as like, if you were as being his coach and somebody that's known him all these years, what would be the perfect ending?
Pretty much, he's got to do what's going to make him happy. Like, if he wants to do another fight, go ahead. If he doesn't, don't. Knowing.
Do you think he wants to, like, deep down?
Sometimes he does, and I don't think he really does, because, like I said, he understands what he has to give to do to represent himself, or what happens is, like, we didn't see the full Nick Diaz in his last fight, in the Robbie Lawler fight. We saw glimpses of it.
Yep.
Like, wow, dude, this guy's out of shape and look what he's doing. He's amazing. But we didn't see the modern fan doesn't understand what Nick was, So I think he's an amazing teacher, and I would like him to maybe share, and get a love for teaching, and maybe have his own academy and teach and do whatever. Maybe another thing too is, I think it's important, like what Nate did, was he got married and to someone that kind of keeps him grounded and has a good mentality, and Nick never had that. Right. So I think sometimes if you marry the right person, I think it helps you. If you marry the wrong person,
Nate kind of keeps that, like, kind of under, like, he doesn't bring that. I like that. I like that he kind of keeps that, like, to the side. 'Cause he has a kid now too, right?
He got three.
Oh, three.
Yeah,
Damn,
exactly. Yeah, he's got 3 kids.
That's dope. See that, and he keeps that.
He's got his family life, and then he's got his other life. His fight life, his training life. I've never seen his wife at the gym. Mm-hmm. She doesn't go to the gym. Right. She's not allowed at the fight house. There's no girls there. When there's a fight house, there's no women. Yeah. it's separate.
Separate, yeah.
It's a whole different, like, hey, this is my life. When I come home, that's my other life. And he does that, and he balances that well, and that's helped him, you know?
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for him is he basically stuck to, see, I was not his MMA coach. I showed him stuff, and I taught him jiu-jitsu, but his MMA coach was Nick.
Right.
And, you know, he still follows the game plan that Nick set.
Right.
Nick set that game plan, you know what I mean? But Nick doesn't follow that game plan. So it's kind of, but look, Nate has great success following the game plan.
Nate's gone on to like left the UFC. He's doing all these like, different fights. He's making a ton of money. He's still super popular. Right. Are you amazed at like remembering watching those two kids the first time you saw to see what they became? And it's like, does it still shock you sometimes?
Because the way the sport has gone, you know, it's like a rock and roll status thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these guys are the new rock stars, you know? So I remember one time Nate was fighting, I think it was in Denver or something, and he did the double thing, you know, and the crowd, man, there's something, the people loved him. And I was just like, I mean, I got like emotional. I was just like, man, this kid here, this kid, he didn't have any talent. All he had was drive. All he said was he put in his head, I'm going to do what my brother, I'm going to do what Cesar tells me to do. I'm going to do what my brother tells me to do. And that's all he did. And now he's a huge superstar.
Absolutely.
You know, he's doing, it's like he just stuck to it and he didn't let any distractions get in the way. And yeah, it was good.
And what do you think, we said about Nick, what do you think is next for Nate? What do you think, like what was the perfect ending for as far as you? Do you think he would like to see him
according to what
again?
He said, yeah, definitely. And he told me not, you know, recently that he still feels good.
Yeah.
He says, Cesar, I feel good. I feel like I can still, you know, and I, you know, what he said in public, so I'm not, is that, you know, I see him back in the UFC at some point doing some fights, and I'd love to see that in the UFC.
That'd be the best bet. I'm sure
that'd be huge.
Else would too.
Everybody, I mean, the crowd loves him. I mean, I was at his last boxing match against Masvidal. I mean, what a performance he put on you. He didn't look that great against Jake Paul. You know, he was kind of, things happen, but the thing you got to understand is like a lot of guys, they get hurt and they pull out of the fight. Nate gets hurt, he stays in the fight.
Yeah.
He'll have broken ribs, or sometimes he'll have whatever, he's still fighting.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a giant cut like he had one time, and I think they have to postpone the fight for 1 month, but the doctors wouldn't clear him. It's like, but you know, sometimes it's like, well, what's up with Nate? Well, that's because Nate's hurt, but when he signs to fight, he's fighting. Yeah. You know, so but I see him back in the UFC probably.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll see both the Diaz at least one more time in the UFC. That'd be good, and we'd love to see them go out, you know, with the win, you know, because those guys, you know, that's ultimately I know that's deep down what everybody that's been a fan of them wants for them, you know, just to see them successful and walk out with a smile on their faces, you know. Yeah. Because that game can take a lot from you, a lot more than it gives. So.
You can take it off from you if you're not careful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the other guys, Gilbert and Jake. Gilbert, he's doing. I talked to Gilbert recently, and I seen he opened up another school. How proud are you of that? That he's kind of
it's great.
He's taken that, because I think the analyst thing he does really well.
Yes.
And now he's just kind of. I don't see him compete anymore, but he's really taking this coaching thing to the next level and spreading the.
He's coaching. He's got a good stable of guys, young guys over there, 20 years old, something like that. A bunch of really tough guys that are. He's got some guy in the UFC. I mean, he's doing really well. And I think right now he's promoting too a fight show. So the first one was very successful. He's got one coming up December 14th, back up there, the San Jose area, and. You know, with Scott Coker that did the Bellator, Strike Force, whatever. Yep. Not Bellator, Strike Force. And so he's wearing many hats at this point. He's having fun with it, and he's doing good. So
amazing.
Yeah.
And then Jake Shields, the last one, he shout out to his new podcast too. I know you're going to be on it. We were talking about that earlier. Jake Shields. If you guys don't know, Jake Shields' podcast is out. Make sure you go check it out. I know he had. I was watching an episode with Hoist on there. And how proud are you of Jake as well? Because he kind of did two things. Not only was he one of the best in MMA, but I feel like he still competes at jiu-jitsu, and he
still competes jiu-jitsu.
Teaches, like he's doing it all.
The seminars, doing the podcast, and very tough guy that reached the pinnacle of the sport, multiple Elite XC Strike Force. I mean, you know, he had so many championships, judo, you name it. There was, you know, the guy has so many belts. I can't even know.
The thing that's stands out to me always is like they have a lot of love for you, those guys, which is the cool thing, and they rep you, and like, and that comes to what you did for them, and that's why I feel like it's so important to bring out these stories of the coaches, because without the coaches, you don't see the domino effect of little things that happen in your life are the reason your life ends up the way it is. So it's been pretty sick to be a part of that journey, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. One thing I really like too is like because remember I grew up under like the Carlson Gracie era, and back in the day it was Carlson Gracie, and then in jiu-jitsu you had Carlson, you had Gracie Baja, you had Alliance, Nova Union, and then in fighting you had these teams, and the Lions Den, you had Pat Miletich guys, and so we had our team. And I see that, like, I don't see many teams today anymore. It's just fighters. It's like this fighter trains out of this place, but he's representing it's himself. There's
no like teams like that.
I liked the teams anymore. Back in the day because it gave that, man, our team is fighting your team, and we're gonna, it was kind of cool.
Those days are the sport's just getting bigger and bigger too. And now they have all these PIs open up everywhere. I think it's gonna, in the next 10 years, it's gonna change. With that being said, let me ask you this, but and like as we're getting closer towards the end, what do you think of the jiu-jitsu of today? Like, one of the things that I've been saying, and I've been saying it on the podcast, is like, I love jiu-jitsu, but I didn't get into jiu-jitsu specifically for jiu-jitsu. I saw MMA, and I just happened to get good at jiu-jitsu, and that became part of it. But my style of jiu-jitsu has always been MMA style as well. Like, of course, I competed in jiu-jitsu, white through black belt and Pan Ams, all that with the gi and all that. But I felt like I'm gonna say this, and I've said it on the podcast before, but I came from the streets, and I used to fight in the street a lot. I was going in and out of jail. I had been in riots and stuff. For me, MMA was like the best form of a real fight.
Right.
And jiu-jitsu just happened to be like, part of it. But coming up with my coach, there was a lot of striking involved as well with the jiu-jitsu. What do you think, like, because I feel like the sport jiu-jitsu has taken away from the level of jiu-jitsu in the UFC.
I agree. How do I put this? So, and there's nothing wrong with sport jiu-jitsu, obviously. It's great, but I think what happens is sometimes a rule set might come into play, and that rule set will change the way the sport is. So let's say you're doing a tournament and you can't do this. This is points. If you do this, it's an advantage. If you do this, and
you're DQ'd.
So when you've got that rule set, and then you've got a guy that's great at that rule set, oh, well, he's the champion, and he's better than you or whoever at that rule set. And back in my day, the rules were different. They didn't have as many, little synchronicities, if you will. And so therefore the sport was different.
Yeah.
And I don't like two guys pulling guard constantly. It's just, we all had to be judo black belts. We all had to have takedowns. I
can't stand that either. I'll be honest.
I mean, nothing wrong with pulling guard, but you have to
shoot and pull guard.
Exactly,
yeah,
something. It's just
be connected. Like, you don't just sit on your butt.
And what inspired people in the beginning was the effectiveness of this was the real deal. And I feel like it's losing that effectiveness. I've had world champion black belts come to my school that literally could not defend themselves against a blue belt, like in a fight.
Right.
They had no idea how to defend. And if there was any kind of striking or any kind of anything, their whole game went out the window.
Absolutely.
And I'm like looking at like known world champions where I'm just like, dude, you don't know how to defend yourself.
Right.
How can you be a black belt at anything if you don't know how to defend yourself? So there's that.
Yeah, that's what I worry about. Like, the sport of jiu-jitsu has kind of done to jiu-jitsu as a whole. And I always try to make it a point to tell my students, like, jiu-jitsu starts from your feet still.
Yeah, starts from your feet, exactly.
In a real fight, not only does it start from your feet, but there could be elbows, there could be punches, there could be, kicks, all that. So so like, what do you think, like, is the best bet, like, for someone that wants to do jiu-jitsu but also wants to learn the self-defense aspect of it?
Yeah, see, that's why, and on the other hand, there are people that just do like some self-defense and, and I don't know. So there's
either or. That's where it gets tough, right?
That's where it gets tough. Like in my day, we had to have self-defense was part of the curriculum.
You had to be able to stop punches and stuff.
Yeah, there were punches. In my school, there were like a lot of times the classes, okay, look, you're blocking here, you're clinching, you're doing this, and Hickson School was like that, the early Gracie Baja schools, and now it's like, we're just going to do this roll. We're just going to, pull guard real quick and do a 50-50. And it's kind of like, what are we doing here? So there's that.
That's I think the evolvement of it is
Yeah.
because like it's gotten so sport oriented and there's no strikes involved. So
Yeah.
it's just like people are doing all kinds of stuff that you're not going to see in a real fight.
Correct.
Do you know what I'm like? You're gonna be able to do a lot of moves in your jiu-jitsu class that you're not gonna be able to pull off in a real fight. It's just not going to happen.
100%.
And that's where I feel like jiu-jitsu is getting kind of scrambled like all over the place with that.
Yeah.
You know?
you need to be well-rounded, and you have to, so yeah, I'm still
Tough
from the
one.
old school where you kind of like, look, you need to know how to defend yourself. You need to know how to wrap someone up, how to safely do certain things, when to do this, when you can't, and I agree. A lot of schools have lost that. And all they care about is, did you get that medal at that little IBJJ?
And score 2
at that
points
IBJJ thing? Did you get that advantage? And then on some so there's a lot of that for sure. And yeah.
Let me ask you this: gi and no gi, right? As this evolved, I remember coming up. My coach is old school, and we trained a lot in the gi. Of course, we had to train gi and no gi. It didn't make a difference, right?
Right.
And my coach always said, gi for me makes no difference, and he meant it, and I get it now because I say the same thing too. Like when I could put a gi on and I could have a gi off, I'm still gonna be the same guy. It's not gonna affect too much.
Yeah.
I don't even need the grips with the gi on sometimes.
Right.
Like I don't, But do you feel like I feel like the gi is kind of getting lost in translation now as the years are going, and it's getting more and more no gi. Like
for sure, there's a lot of gi-less, and again, I love both. One thing, and I don't agree with a lot of these guys that say, oh, gi is going to be obsolete, because the fact of the matter is, you wear clothes. You're wearing clothes. You're wearing a jacket. You're wearing pants.
Right.
The gi was originally there to mimic what your clothing.
Self-defense.
Exactly. It's like, look, you wear these clothes, you wear pants and you wear a jacket and you wear a belt on on your pants, whatever. So here you go. You're going to put this gi on so you don't ruin your clothes.
Right.
And that's it. And so I knew gi-less guys that terrible. I don't choke them out, no problem, or do whatever.
Right. Because they have no idea.
I think you got to do both.
Yeah.
And even you mentioned Jake Shields and these guys that they're gi-less guys, but Jake Shields won Pan Ams.
Right.
With
he's
the gi.
just as good as in the gi as he is without it.
Tough. Yeah. So
but that's because a lot of these guys have trained in the gi extensively.
They trained in the gi
to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason I said this all was because as it becomes more and more modern, more and more people do it. If it gets more and more transition to no-gi, then you're taking a lot of the self-defense out of it. And I feel like you should do both, period. You can't tell me that you're a jiu-jitsu black belt and not have worn a gi. It just doesn't go together.
Yeah, for sure.
You
got to do both.
You have to. That's my opinion, because how could, like, if they put the gi on, you call yourself a jiu-jitsu black belt and you don't know nothing with the gi. That's not. You can't say that then.
Yeah. How are you going to teach someone to defend themselves with their? What are you going to do?
A simple X choke. Like if you don't, if you've never put a gi on, how are you going to tell somebody how to stop that and then call yourself a jiu-jitsu black belt as well? Which, a lot of jiu-jitsu originated in the gi.
100%. I mean, what do you?
Just do both.
Take off your shirt, put on these shorts, and you can say, winter time.
And tell me if you agree on this. I feel like when you do train with the gi, if you're actually trained with the gi a lot and you get good at it, like when you take it off, there's nothing holding you back anymore.
Yeah,
like it becomes easy to pass and put your, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it has its benefit for those of you that don't do gi. Wearing the gi actually has a lot of benefits to your game, especially I feel like on top and passing and stuff.
For sure. You know, so obviously change your grips or whatever, but like you said, I think you got to do both. Right. I really do.
Thank you for that. Just a couple more before I get you out of Cesar. You know, it's been an honor. Right now, this day and age, mm-hmm. Do you watch the sport of MMA anymore?
Yeah, I do.
Who's your number one guy? Who do you feel is like the best guy?
I like these guys coming out from Dagestan, you know, what it reminds and so forth. And
Islam, I don't know. And Khabib.
Yeah, well, the Khabib's gone, but Islam. Khabib's gone, you know, Islam.
Umar.
Yeah, you know, the thing about it, because, you know, say what you will, like even Khabib with the Sambo, whatever,
right?
He used to train a lot of jiu-jitsu.
Oh, they're jiu-jitsu guys.
They're jiu-jitsu guys. Those guys train at Henzo's.
Come on, bro.
These guys are doing jiu-jitsu. There's
absolutely.
No, you know, they did jiu-jitsu, but they did it with the, you know, like Brazil back in the day. You know, you got hungry people. You got people that, man, they got to eat. They're fighting they need it, you know, right. and that's changed. And then all of a sudden, these guys have money. The little playboy acting like, oh, now they're not raw anymore.
Yeah,
they lost it. You know what I mean?
Lost that hunger. Yeah.
Now the guys over there, those guys over there in the mountain, now they got that. Like,
yeah,
we're here to, man, we're ready to die for this. We're not going to lose. We're going to train hard. And that's what used to be back in the day in Brazil. And it's not the same for the most part now. And you got these guys over in other countries that are very poor and they want it. Absolutely. So I see that. So I like John Jones too.
John Jones is another guy that, this is what I was going to say. And you know, you saying the Dagestani style, mm-hmm. that wrestling mixed with jiu-jitsu has become a lot for MMA especially, right? Because you get two wrestlers against each other, whatever. But what I'm saying, being able to be good at jiu-jitsu and wrestling together is like almost the Mando now, because you're not finishing fights off the back anymore. It's just not. It doesn't happen anymore.
It's hard. So and it goes back to what we were talking about. You know, knowing it starts on your feet and knowing takedowns, whether it be judo or wrestling, you have to know that some takedowns, some good takedowns.
Absolutely.
And a lot with the jiu-jitsu guys, if they're not learning takedowns, then they're going to have a problem.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? That's another thing that, you know, especially if your school's only starting from the knees all the time. Like, you
right.
know,
yeah. And I get it because people standing up, they get hurt, you know.
Yeah.
But if you bring them up slowly, start on the knees, and eventually here, do what you're comfortable with up here and kind of go into it. And, you know, so
I think a lot of that comes to the coach too. How you let your room, do you let your room go 150% on the feet? And if they're going to do that, you're going to for sure end up with some injuries. But if you're able to keep your room under control and there's no egos, then I feel like you should be able to do that.
100%.
And that's a like one. I feel like my opinion, and I wanted to get your take on that. Mm-hmm. Was you know, like, is that's mandatory important for, you know, moving forward in jiu-jitsu is to start incorporating takedowns and more of that. Let me ask you this. So now what's the plan for Cesar Gracie after all these years?
You know, like I said, the passion never really left with I still love the art of jiu-jitsu. I still like going in and teaching a class or something. Obviously I got top guys that teach for me too and everything. But, you know, you get older, you know, you know how it is. You got to run a school all of a sudden. So you got to make sure the books are done or something that takes part of your time.
Right.
But I still love that the sport is growing, and I think there's a lot of growing left, and being part of that, it just keeps me still interested.
And the goal is to still continue to spread the word and spread the knowledge. And if people want to come down to train with you, are you still available for like classes, like 100%. Regular classes?
Yeah, come on out.
And where's the school and everything located, if you can let everybody know?
My main schools, I'm usually in Pleasant Hill or Brentwood, but in Northern California, that Brentwood. And a lot of times I go to the different schools. You mentioned Gills. Sometimes I go to Stockton, Nate's place. I like to visit the other places and see the guys, and everything. But I'm always around.
keep spreading the word.
100%, brother.
And then follow Cesar Gracie on Instagram. And are you doing seminars? Does that become like more?
Before COVID, I'm up to it. I'd like to do. Yeah, I'll do seminars. I'd love to do seminars.
Yeah, so make sure if you guys are looking to book a seminar, reach out to Cesar Gracie. You're on Instagram. You're on Facebook. And make sure you get a hold of him, because what I will tell you, and having you out, like I've been teaching, a long time now, and I've been doing the sport, and I feel like I have a lot of knowledge, and I always keep that white belt mentality of I can always learn something, and for sure, like I'll tell you guys firsthand myself, like the details are amazing, and so even some little, when you start to get good at jiu-jitsu, those little details start to become everything. Especially when you go against other guys that are good. It's those little details in jiu-jitsu that make the big difference, and Cesar's a master at that. So thank you.
Appreciate it, bro.
It's been an honor to have you on my show.
Love it.
Thank you for being here. Big respect to the Gracie family, to you, to the Diaz brothers, Gilbert and Jake, and I hope we spread a little information. And thank you again. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much.
Cesar Gracie, y'all. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and then tell your mama and your daddy, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace. Cesar Gracie, y'all.
Hi, this is Arash Hashemi. For over 20 years, my practice has been dedicated to representing people accused of crimes. There's no criminal case we don't handle here. From a simple petty theft to serious charges such as murder, I have the knowledge and experience needed to help guide you through the court system. Here at my firm, we treat you like family. We listen to your story, help you understand your rights, guide you through every step of the court system, answer your questions, and make sure you know what you're facing so you can sleep easy at night. If you or if anybody you know needs an attorney, remember, better call Hash.
What up, everybody? Quick second out of the podcast to shout out one of my sponsors. Man, after 20 years of jiu-jitsu and MMA, my body's messed up all the time. Shoulders, knees, back, neck, you name it. I only go to one place. They've been taking care of me for years, and they'll take care of you. Home of some of the best fighters in the world, best UFC fighters, best mixed martial arts fighters in the world. Kessler Wellness. Come check them out if you ever get injured. They're going to take care of you just like they take care of me. Come on in.
Hating on me. Hey. And I know it. Watching everything that I do.
Shout out to the homeboy Damo and Big Joker, Big Box.
They been watching, hating on everything I do. They don't wanna see me shining. They just wanna see me struggling, and I know it. They been watching, hating on everything I do. They don't wanna see me shining. They just wanna see me struggling, and I know it. I'm drunk all the time these days. It seems like I'm caught in a maze and trying to make it out with.
Man, I feel way better. Y'all come check out OC Fight Docs, Kessler Wellness. Appreciate you, Doc. You're the best in the business.
I guess they mad when you a grown man. They shoot you down in your homeland. Or you're facing life and got a pro.
What up, y'all? Come check out my boys over here at the I Smoke. Come on in, man. We got everything here in Santa Ana. You guys come down to the shop, tell them Legacy sent you, and man, we got everything you can think of. Take a look around, bro. Go check out all the products, man. Y'all need to tap in with my boys. They look after us. They check the Convo podcast, and we love them. So support those that support us. All right, peace. West Coast.